In a forgotten village where the wind carried dust like sorrow, lived an orphan girl named Grace. Long before she understood the meaning of pain, life had already taught her loss. Her parents died when she was still very young, leaving her in the care of her stepmother, Mrs. Decom, a woman who believed love was weakness and power was cruelty. From childhood, Grace's days were heavy with labor. She woke long before sunrise, when the sky was still dark and silent. She swept the yard until her fingers cracked, fetched water from the distant well until her legs trembled, and cooked meals whose smell she enjoyed, but whose taste she rarely knew. Mrs. Decom watched her closely, always finding fault. "If you were truly grateful," Mrs. Decom would say, "you would work harder." When food was little, Grace was the first to go hungry. When blame was needed, Grace was the first to be accused. Mrs. Decom reminded her daily that she was an orphan, unwanted, replaceable, and unworthy of love. At night, Grace slept on a thin mat near the cold ashes of the fire. Hunger twisted her stomach, loneliness pressed on her chest, but she never allowed bitterness to take root. Instead, she prayed. "God," she whispered into the darkness, "I don't ask for revenge. I ask for strength." Mrs. Decom believed fear was the best teacher. She insulted Grace in front of visitors, dressed her in torn clothes, and laughed whenever Grace spoke of dreams. "No man marries a girl with nothing," she said. "You will die in this house." Grace lowered her eyes, but she did not believe her. One dry afternoon, when the sun burned fiercely and patience was thin, a stranger walked into the village. His clothes were faded, his shoes torn, and dust covered his face. He introduced himself as Raymond, a man searching for work. People laughed, some chased him away, others looked at him with suspicion. Mrs. Decom was harshest of all. "Get out of my yard!" she shouted. "Poverty follows men like you!" But Grace, carrying a water pot, paused. She looked at the stranger's tired eyes and saw not weakness, but dignity. Quietly, she handed him a cup of water. Raymond drank slowly, then smiled. "Thank you," he said, as though the gesture meant more than water. From that day, Raymond worked wherever he could, repairing fences, carrying stones, cleaning fields. He never begged, never complained. He greeted Grace with respect, listened when she spoke, and thanked her for the smallest kindness. Every evening they met by the well. Grace spoke of her suffering, her prayers, her fear of becoming bitter. Raymond spoke of life, of patience, of the value of character. What Grace did not know was that Raymond was watching her carefully. Raymond was not poor. He was a wealthy businessman who owned transport companies, shops, and farms across the region. Wealth had brought him comfort, but also betrayal. People praised him loudly in public and plotted quietly in private. He had been loved for his money, not his heart, so he disguised himself as a poor man to search for truth. And in Grace he found it. When Raymond asked Grace to marry him, he did not promise riches. "I have nothing," he said. "No land, no cattle, no wealth." Grace smiled softly. "I have lived with nothing all my life. What matters is peace and respect." They married quietly. Mrs. Decom laughed bitterly. "You have chosen suffering," she mocked. "Do not return here when hunger defeats you." But Grace left without anger. The first days of marriage were simple. They cooked little food, shared small joys, and prayed together. Grace noticed something strange. Raymond was disciplined, wise, and generous, even when he had little. Then one morning Raymond said, "My wife, travel with me. It is time you knew the truth." They journeyed to the city. When they stopped before tall iron gates, Grace thought they were lost. Guards saluted. Workers bowed. Cars waited. Grace froze. Raymond took her hands. "I was testing the world," he said gently, "and you passed where many failed." Grace cried, not for the wealth but for the meaning behind her suffering. Every insult, every hunger-filled night, every act of kindness had prepared her for this moment. When Mrs. Decom heard the news, her laughter died. Fear replaced cruelty. The orphan she despised had risen, not through manipulation, but through character. Grace returned once, not to boast, but to forgive. She helped the poor, fed the hungry, and showed mercy where she had known none. And the village learned a lesson that could not be ignored. Cruelty may feel powerful, but it builds nothing. Kindness may look weak, but it carries destiny. Those who endure with humility will rise, and those who oppress will one day bow to the truth. Grace became respected, not because she married wealth, but because she carried grace long before wealth arrived. The end.